to talk a bit about what Cadasta does, but first I need to explain a little bit about myself so you'll understand this story. I don't get things as far as the impact of them right away, be it positive or negative. Like, previous to Cadasta, I worked for the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, and we would help respond to disasters by providing open geospatial data. I would never grasp the scale of the disaster until like a month or two later. Same for positive things. So I've worked for Cadasta since April of last year, but I really didn't get our mission until May of this year. And our mission is we provide open source, low-cost solutions for communities to document their land rights. The reason I didn't get it is I had never talked to anyone who really land rights were really important to. And what I mean by that is the parts of the world where people are living on land somewhere and have no legal rights to be there. And what does that mean for their daily lives? What does that mean for their children, education, their health? I just didn't get it. So I was really fortunate last month that I got to go to India in Telangana, which is a state in India. If you've heard of Hyderabad, maybe if you've worked with some outsourcing companies or know a little bit about India, Hyderabad's the capital there, and Telangana's the state. And we went there with a really cool nonprofit called Landesa that's worked for 30 years to help the rural poor have land rights. And we meet these women who got rights to about an acre of land 20 years ago. Out of 10 or 15 women, I think it was about 12, also not that great at counting apparently, one had ever been to school at all, any school, elementary school, nothing. And they received an acre of land 20 years ago. And we talked to them about what that meant for their children. And what I found most amazing about this is that their children were getting bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering. Their lives were fundamentally changed from going from a almost subsistence farmer to being educated, to having thoughts about their future, and not living day to day. And the reason that's important is their rights were not, they didn't gain those rights through use of technology at all. It was, very traditional, bureaucratic, paper application type scenarios. But I'm a technologist, so that's what I get excited about. And the reason we were there was, how could we improve that process? So instead of, let's just make up numbers, maybe you could help 100 people get rights to their land in a month. But what if you're using mobile phones, or even just simple data analysis? Instead of doing it completely on paper, could you make it 200 people? Imagine those scenarios where previously making, as for example, the women we were talking to, 12 people having a difference made in their lives and their children's lives. Imagine if you could do that more quickly, more accurately, more inexpensively. And that's what Cadasta is working on, is how to use that technology. One of the big problems with land rights is a lot of the systems are installed in governments. They're very expensive. A donor might pay for them to be installed. They might be great for a year, and then they fall over. They're systems that can't be kept up to date, or they're too complicated. You can't modify them because they're proprietary. And they're really out of reach of the communities that we're talking about. So we're trying to change that through open source. And a big part of this is, in our land community, is fit for purpose. And that just means you look at the problem and what appropriate technology is. For example, sometimes paper is the right answer. There's a great project called Field Papers we work with. Field Papers allows you to print a map, and there's a QR code and some markings on it. You can take that out, and you could draw your property boundaries on it, take a picture with a mobile phone, and then upload it. The reason that's exciting is once it's uploaded, those markings are used to georeference it. What that means is actually place it somewhere on the earth. And you can trace those markings and then view them in other mapping applications. We're also working with software such as Open Data Kit, which is an Android data collection application, which allows you to design forms in Excel, easily download them to a phone, and then work offline to collect data. And some of these things I'm talking about aren't super high tech. It's not the latest. But the people we are working with need some access to technology to be able to improve their lives. And that, to me, is what's really exciting. A big part of this is, if you think about how land rights work in the United States, you see surveyors out there with very, very expensive equipment. They're measuring things that are accurate to a centimeter. Do you need that sort of accuracy? You have a GPS on your phone. Is that good enough in some areas? I mean, here in Portland, you wouldn't want to use your phone to decide where you were going to dig. You might hit an electrical line or something. But if you're in a rural area and you're just trying to begin to map out property boundaries, that's a perfectly acceptable method of doing it. So we're really looking towards ways we can make it easier and also not reliant on just a few skilled experts such as these surveyors. So beyond what we're doing, I wanted to get into a little bit of the geek stuff as well. So what we're building is completely open. You can go to Cadasta on GitHub, and you can see what we're doing on a daily basis. We're building a web-based platform for storage and management of these land rights that I've talked about. But we also want to encourage people, we also want to help in other ways in the broader technical community. So rather than just sort of building this platform that it's open, but who cares? Like, do you need to document your land rights? Probably not. You probably aren't excited that we have this open source platform that you can stand up yourself. But we do have libraries that are probably useful to you. For example, we released a granular role-based permission system called Django Tutelary. We're a Django shop. And the reason for that is, with the data we're collecting, we need to be able to provide security to the individual attribute in the data we're collecting. And we didn't really find anything out there that met our needs. And we could have just built that directly into our platform, or build it in a way where hopefully other people are interested in it. And we hope maybe it'll be useful to you. We also, as I mentioned, are working with Open Data Kit. So it's a full system that has a web-based application and it also has a mobile application for doing data collection. And the web-based, the server aspect, you're kind of tied to it. You might use it, but then you're going to export the data and do something else with it, probably. It's kind of clunky. So we're also finishing up a library that allows you to embed that in your own applications. And the reason for that is Open Data Kit, as I mentioned, this Android application, is really great for doing offline, flexible data collection, especially in the difficult places we work. So, if you have this need to collect data offline, it's a great tool to use for that. And Field Papers, as I mentioned, is a great application. Stamen Design is the company that originally set that up, that allows you to print maps, easily write on them, and then upload them and transcribe your notes, essentially. And so we sponsored an Outreachy intern. Is anyone familiar with Outreachy here? Seeing a little bit of waves. So Outreachy used to be called the GNOME Outreach Program for Women, and now it's Outreachy. It's meant to get underrepresented groups involved in open source. So we mentored and sponsored an intern for 3 months last year to improve the interface. We've since hired her full-time, and I'm super excited she's part of our team. We're really, we want to get people involved in open source, involved in programming. And I'm fortunate in my position in this small nonprofit that I'm able to think about those things a little bit. If anyone knows any underrepresented groups in open source, or people that might be interested in getting involved in open source, certainly have them look at Outreachy. The next application is in November. Cadasta will be participating, and we'll certainly have some internships. But really key is this holistic approach. We're trying to solve problems not really for people in Portland, in parts of the world that most of us probably haven't even been to. And we're working in collaboration with people there, and we're making sure it's always going to be free, affordable, and open. So think about that. You probably have the right to live where you are, where you came to from here. Maybe there's one or two people squatting, but it's woo! But unusual. Imagine if it was 90% of this room. What would your situation be? Would you be able to get a loan if you needed to do something? If someone in your family was sick, would you be able to get money somehow to help make them healthy? Imagine that different situation. And imagine how you can help with technology to do that. And so that's what we're doing, and I hope it sounds interesting, and I hope you check it out. Our next release is in mid-July, and if it sounds interesting, go give it a look. Thank you.